We can start. Okay. Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us. And today we will speak about DSP advertising. And this is the main topic of our webinar, because most sellers have never heard about most sellers have heard about DSP advertising, but have never worked with this type of advertising. And we collect a few questions, most frequently questions about DSP advertising, and want to discuss all these questions with our friends and our partners, OMG agency. American agency, and I want to introduce our colleague. It is Chris Brewer, CEO of OMG agency, and his co-founder Abigail Otterworth and Austin Chambers. And from our side, we are Amazon Unitix agency. We are 2 years on market, and during this time we became an official verified partner of Amazon and one of the best digital agency in Amazon market. And I want to introduce my colleague Ross. He head of our internal traffic direction, and I am Alex Tkach, CEO of Unitix agency. And I will hand over to Chris. Chris, please tell us about yourself, your agency, your background, and then move to DSP.
Yeah, thanks, Alex, so much for inviting us on here. I know you and I have worked a long time, and you've been persistent in working to get this webinar out to your folks. And I think it's fantastic that we're all here this morning and this evening, wherever you may be. I'm actually the co-founder of the agency. My business partner, Brett Curry, who has the eCommerce Evolution podcast, he's the CEO. And I have been obviously with the agency for 14 years. We've got 70 plus individuals on our team, and we specialize on Google Ads, Microsoft Ads, native ads, Klaviyo, SMS, YouTube advertising, in addition to supporting our agency partners with our Amazon DSP service that we're going to be talking about today, and excited to be here.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your introduction. And let's move to DSP. So, Chris, please explain us what DSP is. Maybe some sellers have never heard about DSP, and please to tell us what is it.
Sure. And actually, it's kind of interesting too, because if you search for Amazon DSP in Google, that Amazon has so many acronyms. There's another acronym that Amazon has that's DSP, which makes it really fun to try and advertise the service, by the way. And it is a programmatic platform. So if you just, to simplify it, if you've ever been served a display ad, which you have, on news sites, different kind of discussion sites, blog sites, places like that, or you've been retargeted by an ad searching for something, going out and then seeing that something in front of you, following you around, you have been a part of some type of programmatic ad serving network that gathers your audience data from your behavior online, and in many cases, your search activity online that's been processed by the different entities that are out there, or the different tools that are on sites that you may visit. So everyone knows online that our information is everywhere, in spite of Apple's attempts to secure everyone and make everyone safe. Your information is still out there. And so we as sellers can utilize that information both from individuals who have visited our storefront and our product pages, in addition to if you've got a Shopify site, for instance, and you don't sell on Amazon, but you want Amazon's audience to be able to get them to your Shopify site, you can also advertise off Amazon to reach Amazon customers. So that's the high level on DSP. Hopefully that was helpful.
Okay, thank you. And tell us, please, about features of Amazon and maybe main difference from other types of advertising.
I think I'm going to does Rob or Austin want to take that one? Just so that I can invite some of the team onto that one.
I'll take a stab at this one. So one of the big things about DSP versus, and I like to compare it to Amazon PPC because same store that we're sending it to, at least. The main difference in Amazon's DSP is everything is view-based. All attribution is view-based instead of strictly being click-based. So if you have a PPC ad, a sale only gets attributed if someone clicks on that ad. You only pay for it when someone clicks on the ad. With DSP, we're paying for impressions. Sales can be attributed to impressions. Product page views can be attributed to impressions. So it's not strictly click-based like a lot of people think of Amazon marketing. Mm-hmm. Some of the nice features with DSP versus like a search or a click-based marketing is we have a lot of options with customizing ads. So it's audience targeting versus keyword targeting. So we're able to really customize and tailor our audience to be exactly what we want it to be. Whether it's very, very broad or very exact. We can bring in exclusions and all sorts of different demographic and regional based targeting that a lot of times just isn't available through PPC based advertising.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Let's move. So next common question is, which products are best suited for DSP advertisement?
I can take this one if you guys want.
Yeah.
So typically we've worked with a lot of verticals, and one of the best verticals we've found is consumables, supplements, that type of thing, as well as things that have a longer consideration period. Typically your spur of the moment purchases where someone jumps on Amazon and buys it right away is not something that's going to do well with DSP, just because we typically do a 2-day and a 30-day look back window, meaning people that have viewed the detail page but haven't purchased right away and are thinking about it. Those are the people that we want to typically hit, and higher price points typically tend to do a little better than those low priced spur of the moment products.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ross, do you have something else regarding this question?
Yeah, no, I just move on to the next. Okay.
Okay, guys, tell us please what budget you recommend to use for each product. So do you have any limits for budget? I don't know, maybe from $5,000-$10,000 per one ASIN, or I don't know. Please explain us how you count budget for each product.
Yeah, and we've actually recently adjusted how we think about budgets on DSP. Instead of doing it on a per product basis, it's more so looking at how much we want to spend on the entire funnel on DSP, and we compare it to what's being spent on someone's PPC advertising. So with different campaigns that we've worked on for different clients, we found typically you want your DSP budgets to be spending between 10 to 20% of what they're spending on PPC. So if you're spending $100,000 a month on your PPC advertising on Amazon, we want to spend probably around at least $15,000 on DSP between different campaign types. So retargeting, upper funnel, mid funnel, competitor targeting. Usually we'll start off with a $3,000 to $5,000 budget for one product for bottom of the funnel strategies, and then we'll grow from there. So typically the more you spend over a longer period, that's when you start to see results. You're not necessarily going to see immediate results spending $1,000 a month on one strategy type. You really have to introduce multiple strategies and various levels of the funnel over a long period of time. And we found that 15 to 20% of your Amazon advertising budget should be allocated to DSP alone.
Yeah, and I'll add a little more something to that, because I've handled all of the inbound initial interest in DSP to our agency since we started, what, 5 years ago, 4 years ago? I don't know. We've been doing it a long time. And we have evolved our thinking a bit over the years. We have, I would argue, more data, or at least as much data as some of the oldest running agencies on Amazon. So we have enough data points to be able to really recommend the right approaches. And like you guys do with your clients and partners you work with, we don't ever want to recommend something that's just good for the agency. We want to make sure it's good for the brand on a long-term basis. And what we've seen with DSP along the landscape is that you've got Amazon, who at the very beginning, they were the only company that could run it for you because it was their DSP. And they would run it for you. And of course, when you put the decision-making in the hands of the person who's benefiting primarily from the advertising, it sometimes is more top of funnel related completely. And that's where I heard over the years some just discouraged sellers because they felt like they'd spent $30,000 or $50,000 over a couple of months and they just didn't see the impact over it. And then you got the flip side, where then as agencies could start running it like ours and be able to offer much lower spends than what Amazon would require, we would let folks advertise initially for as low as $2,500. In the early days, $1,000, $1,500 a month. And really, it was good because we could help sellers who just qualified on an ASIN level for the amount of audiences to be able to run ads. And so it was exciting for those people to be able to try it. But like we kind of mentioned before, there just isn't enough there to be able to make good decisions, and we just never saw the impact. So the smaller sellers are the people who only ran minimum levels of retargeting. They would run for 3 or 4 months and go, "Hey guys, it's great, you did a great job," but we really didn't see the impact. And so they would then they would then stop running. And whereas we would see the sellers, I'm gonna let Austin finish what we saw while I go take care of my dog.
Yeah. And basically what Chris was going to say, we would have brands that were running such low budget amounts that we would pause ads and they wouldn't see any difference because their DSP efforts were just a drop in the bucket. So basically what we found is once you get to the point that you're spending 15-20% of your ad dollars on DSP over a long period of time, you actually see a change in the bottom line. You see increase in top line sales, better efficiency in PPC and stuff like that. So trying to get away from clients that are only wanting to spend a few $1,000s a month on bottom of funnel efforts, because we've seen it just really isn't all that beneficial in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what is your minimal recommended budgets to actually see the results, to actually see the impact?
Right now we're looking at between 8,000 and 10,000, and that's a slow build. So over the first 3 months, we build out multiple stages of the funnel to where we're at a minimum of 8,000 to 10,000 in spend. Now, depending on what you're spending on PPC, it might be more than that, but that would be the lowest point that we would try to get to, would be that 8 to 10,000.
8 to 10,000 per month, yes?
Yep. Correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Alex, do you have any more questions about budgets?
No, about budgets, I got everything I want.
Okay, so let's move on. So next question, what to look for when analyzing DSP advertisements? So basically, what is main key metrics for you and for the clients to analyze?
Yeah. Typically what we look for, obviously attributed sales. So as with any advertising effort, you want to look at what your ACoS or ROAS is. So we definitely look at attributed sales. But beyond that, because DSP is playing into your overall Amazon efforts, we want to look at total sales from your seller or vendor account. We want to look at your PPC efficiency, your conversion rate, your overall sessions, because DSP should never be looked at in a silo. We analyze some of the numbers in a silo because we have to obviously optimize the campaigns on the platform. But it's playing into your organic ranking, your PPC efficiencies, your overall sessions and units sold. So there are usually a lot of the high level numbers feeding into your total sales are what we look for over the long term.
Okay, thank you. Let's make it a little bit harder. So obviously it's complex and that's all, but if you were asked about one key metric that is the most important for Amazon DSP, what would you choose?
And I wouldn't say it's necessarily most important for DSP alone, but I always look at tacos. So basically total advertising cost of sales. So that's your total Amazon ad dollars versus your total sales. And 1 month doesn't matter. 1 month it could be 10% or 50%. That doesn't mean anything. We want to see is we change our DSP strategies and introduce more and more budget. How does tacos change over time? Because if we can lower tacos or keep it the same as we're increasing spend, then that's exactly what we want to see. So I would say tacos is the most important number.
Yeah, and I might add, and if you guys would like to share this with your sellers, we can provide you one that you could share. And we recently completed 1 or 2 case studies, one for sure that speaks right to that impact of what happened over time and how it impacted overall tacos. I think in this one, it lowered it by like 7% or so, which was a significant move for this advertiser over time.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Alex, please proceed.
Okay, my next question about for what type of sellers you recommend to use DSP advertising and for what product? I mean, what do you think? DSP advertising eligible only for big businesses or small business with pretty small volume of sales can also use DSP advertising?
I'll start out, and then I'd like to hear from Rob Dean on this one. That, you know, I would say that we get requests sometimes from folks that may be selling on Amazon. Let's say that they're $1 million seller on Amazon, but they've launched a Shopify site and they're really wanting to just get as much sales shifted to Shopify. And so they'll come and they'll want to talk about DSP for that. Those are kind of situations I would not recommend because really the brands that we see, I think this is important, that utilize DSP for off Amazon, just only off Amazon traffic, sending it to an off Amazon site. We're talking major enterprise level brands that have a percentage of their budget that they're really not expecting to look at performance marketing level KPIs. Whereas on the smaller side of things, I think Rob, you could probably talk about like maybe the types of small sellers or categories or things like that, there's usually never really one rule of thumb that you can put across the whole board. But Rob, what are your thoughts in addition on that question?
Well, it kind of goes back to what Austin was saying earlier. We want to have enough spend available that we can make an impact. And so, like he was saying, we typically want them to be spending at least 40 or 50,000 in PPC spend so that we can get enough budget to make those ads effective. Also, the hard thing is with retargeting, we're limited by Amazon's own threshold for getting those audiences approved. They're ASIN based, they're view based, but you have to have a certain number of sessions per 30 days in order to qualify for retargeting. And so what we found with some of the smaller companies is they just don't have enough traffic to their detail pages to qualify for retargeting. And so it usually works a little bit better for established sellers that kind of have a brand presence on Amazon, and we're funneling additional traffic there. And so it's not necessarily for a startup brand, usually someone that already has a brand presence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I would add to that if there's new sellers on here, you really need to be cautious with, let's just say that other DSP sellers. There's some out there that utilize software to run your DSP ads. They'll allow pretty much anybody to jump on and start running ads with the assistance of software. Those are some of the number one leads that I end up getting later because they had a bad experience over there. I'm not saying everyone, I'm just saying that if you're a startup seller, or you look at this is, I guess, an important one. If you're looking at what was it? Is your advertising report? It's business reports, then advertising reports, and you're looking at your session data in a 30-day look back window, and you're seeing that your hero ASIN is getting 7,500 sessions a month. You're going to qualify technically, but likely there's not enough there to really justify running ads, at least that you're going to see. You may be getting benefit from it from a retargeting basis, but we're just not going to be able to line up the dots. Now, Amazon is going to tell you, as all of us sellers know, Amazon's going to tell you from an attribution standpoint that you did fantastic, from a return on ad spend perspective. But being able to actually see that in other elements of your data is pretty hard at the lower levels.
Okay. So let's imagine that the seller is already doing Amazon PPC and he's doing great as he's thinking about Amazon DSP. So for that specific audience, like what key benefits of DSP you would share?
Yeah, I think for established sellers that are doing well, sometimes you hit a plateau where you're reaching all of your audience. There aren't any more people searching for the keywords that you're targeting. DSP is scalable. There are very large audiences. Retargeting can go from a 1 day to a 90-day look back window. With consumables, you can do repurchasing out to a year. So people that have purchased the product a year in the past. And then we get into lifestyle audiences and market audiences that have 100 million people in them. So it seems like usually we run into situations where PPC advertisers are performing great. They're just not able to grow anymore. And that's where DSP comes into play. We're able to fill out the funnel, go upper funnel, find people that aren't familiar with the brand, didn't even know that the brand or product line existed, and introduce new people into that category.
Okay, thank you. So next question, when is it better to start using Amazon DSP? At launch of the product, side by side with Amazon PPC, or is it better working for the products with history? So what's your opinion?
that kind of goes to what I was mentioning just a minute ago. It usually needs to be an established brand. Now we have helped those established brands launch new products. We call it a cross promo. Basically, we advertise people that have viewed their other products and then advertise the new product. But typically with retargeting, like I said, Amazon has a threshold of sessions that you have to meet in order to retarget those specific people that have viewed that product detail page. So it usually needs to be an established brand. We just don't have the option to retarget with a new product unless they're already established on Amazon.
Okay, thank you. Next question about optimization kind of already been told us. So Alex, please proceed with your question.
Very frequently asked question about bidding strategy. You used in DSP advertising, and from myself, I want to add to this question for which bids you start working with any product. I mean, with low bids or with high bids and decreasing them during the work. So tell please us a bit about bidding strategy and bidding overall.
Yeah, and one thing, and I mentioned this, I think on maybe the second question is DSP is view-based, not based. So instead of setting a bid at $2 and expecting to pay $2 for a click, we're setting a bid at $2 and expecting to pay $2 for 1,000 impressions. So it's a CPM instead of a CPC basis. So cost per 1,000 impressions. So DSP has the option to advertise on Amazon, off Amazon. They have third-party ad vendors that they buy inventory from. And the bidding strategy really depends on where we're showing ads and the size of the audience. So the larger the audience, the lower the CPM. If we're doing a very small retargeting audience, only showing on Amazon, we might have a $15 or $20 CPM versus a very large audience showing everywhere might be a $3. We break down the campaigns to show in those different places. So for an on Amazon placement for a retargeting campaign, we might have a CPM target of $10 to $12. Whereas if we're running an in-market campaign to a really broad audience and we're showing on Amazon and off Amazon, that might be more like $3 or $4. So the bidding strategy depends on the audience that we're targeting, the size of that audience, and then where those ads are being placed. So typically we have our defaults that are pretty conservative, pretty low bids. And we usually let campaigns run for a few weeks and then we increase bids from there. But typically we start with bids or CPA targets in the $5 to $8 range.
Okay, thank you. Now, please tell us more about the placements of Amazon DSP. So where people can find this ad.
One of the beauties of Amazon is all of the exclusive placements that you do get. Not only can you show on Amazon, but as Chris mentioned briefly, you can show numerous places off Amazon. I mean, you could be browsing someone's blog, you could be on a newspaper website. They also have they have their Amazon, they have their Open Exchange, they have their Amazon Publisher Services. That includes like Yahoo, weather.com. They have mobile apps that you could be playing a game and an ad can pop up. There's Twitch for anybody that watches Twitch streamers. There's placements on that in stream as well as just static. Also, they have their streaming TV potential, where if you're watching something on your Fire Stick or Roku or any of those, when you're watching and it takes one of those breaks, I've seen numerous DSP ads just watching shows at night with my wife. And so there's a lot of exclusive placements you get access to with Amazon's exclusive inventory. So there's virtually nowhere that you can't show an Amazon ad other than maybe like Facebook.
Okay, and what level of control do you have over that placements? So can you target specifically on Twitch or Yahoo, or what level of control do you have?
Yeah, we've got control over what inventory we select. And as Austin was mentioning, we usually break it out by line type when we're setting up these orders in there. And so one line item will be exclusively open exchange inventory. One line item will be exclusively Amazon inventory. One line item will be exclusively mobile app. And then we can kind of customize from there based on the performance of the different inventories in those categories. So there's a lot of granularity available in the inventory and targeting options for DSP.
And if you want to get even more specific, we can always, if you don't want to show on Yahoo, we can go and exclude it. If you only want to show on Yahoo, we can go in and make sure that's the only website selected. We can only show on Amazon.com. We could only show on the Amazon app, or only on Twitch, or on all of the above. So you really have full control over where you show or where you don't show.
Mhm.
Okay.
I don't want to derail the questions here, but Rob, you kind of like briefly touched on STV. Can you guys kind of talk to the budget that STV kind of needs, and how it's a little bit different than just our retargeting, repurchasing, and more kind of upper funnel stuff?
Yeah, so what Abby and Rob are talking about, so STV is streaming TV. It used to be called OTT at Amazon, so you might have heard that as well. And that's basically Amazon's version of TV commercials. So the one thing that we found with that is the budget minimums required to actually run those and get some sort of performance is significantly higher than any other ad type. We've run campaigns with a $25,000 monthly budget and really haven't seen it make much of an impact on the seller account. So these, as Rob said, these are in-stream ads. Basically like if you're watching TV, it goes to commercial break and we're running a 15 or 30-second commercial for your product. Instead of a $10 CPM, like for static images, we might be looking at a $35 CPM. So the very different ad type. Usually these are only going to be for very, very established brands, well-known brands that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on Amazon advertising. But those brands are out there, and if you're working with them, then it could be a great option. So.
Okay, thank you for explanation. Next question. Do you have any new types of analytics for Amazon DSP comparing to just regular Amazon PPC? And here is next, two questions in one. How to create creatives for DSP with the help of advertising analytics?
There aren't a ton of easy to use analytics specific to DSP. Most of the metrics that we look at, and basically what informs all of our decision making, is metrics coming straight from the platform. There are a few really generic audience insights that they give us, talking about demographics and time of day and audience overlap, stuff like that, that kind of informs where we should show, when we should show, who we should show to. But it's really broad, not very specific or super helpful when we're talking about only spending $10,000, $15,000 a month. One new release, and this was, I say new, it was sometime early last year, I think, possibly the fall before, was AMC, so Amazon Marketing Cloud, which basically it's any metric or any data point that Amazon has, they give to us. Now, The issue with that is getting a developer or a data scientist that can actually make sense of it. There are some software companies out there that have done it that are very expensive. And we've gotten a little bit of a look into AMC and what data points it provides. But even with advertisers that are spending $50,000, $60,000 a month on DSP, from Amazon's perspective, that's still a relatively small amount. So AMC, it only shows so much. So they offered those analytics, but what we found is with a lot of the small to mid-sized brands that we've worked with, those analytics aren't substantial enough to really inform decision-making. Now, as far as you mentioned, making creative specific to DSP based on those analytics, they do, and this is actually a study or a feature on DSP that was released recently, was doing A/B testing with creatives, and it actually spitting out feedback from Amazon panels. So they'll send out a panel to different people that have been served the ad, and they answer questions based on the panel that they're going through. There is minimum fees for stuff like that. So usually what we do if we're looking through creatives and trying to figure out what we want to run, well, it's mostly trial and error. We can do A/B tests where we have a very similar creative, same product, and we're using a different product image. We're using different ad copy, and we'll let those run side by side for 30 days and look at which one has the best click-through rate, the best detail page view rate, the best ROAS. And that's usually the best way that we can go about tailoring creatives for DSP. There's not any great options out there for everyday sellers that helps us do that.
Yeah, and one observation here, I'm just listening to Austin's brilliance come through. Austin just lays it out so flat, like, let me just lay it on you here. It can be a sense of overwhelm to a degree. And also, I've been running programmatic since our agency ran it for local businesses. So, finding a programmatic network to show ads targeted just in a zip code or a region in a centralized area. And even local business owners, plumbers, electricians, restaurants, they were even used to, with their Google pay-per-click, to be able to know someone clicked on this ad, they went to my site, they filled out this form, or they gave me a phone call. And just in general, like programmatic, all programmatics, there's so many ways to interpret data, and some of it's going to be lacking in some areas that can sometimes frustrate a seller if they don't have a team like a Rob or an Austin or an Abby to help you navigate all of these various levels. And that's why, again, I got to caution sellers to not just jump into any DSP relationship because someone has a seat on Amazon. It takes a very educated and experienced team to make the right kind of decisions for each brand. And again, I've seen the results of this because I'm the one that gets people coming to us who've had bad experiences from others. And the sad thing about that is what ends up happening is you get brands that have bad experiences, or they didn't run enough data. They just think this doesn't work. And the worst thing business owners do is try something, it doesn't work, and then it's dead to them forever. I will never go back. It was terrible. And then they end up posting it in chat rooms and in Facebook groups and private groups that we can't see. And the funny thing to me is that it actually just helps the brands that are doing it right, that are killing it, And they will never comment on those negative posts to say, look how great this is for me. I know this because I've been told this. Like, Chris, I think it's hilarious when I see people ripping on DSP, because that just keeps people out that are my competitors. And so again, that doesn't mean that a brand won't have an experience that is great for them on DSP. And again, that's why you have to have a trusted team. Well, I'll just ask the team, have we ever gone to a brand and said, hey, we've done this, we've done that, we just don't see it, and we just don't want you guys to keep spending money? Have we done that? I think we have.
Oh, yeah.
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 So,
I wouldn't say I do it all the time, but I've definitely done it where I'm like, hey, things aren't working. Let's cut this. So
I had to do that on a couple calls yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you guys. And tell us, please, about problems you meet when you work with DSP advertising, and maybe how to avoid these problems and maybe mistakes. So your suggestions and your experience.
yeah. And Chris kind of just touched on one of them, and that is sellers coming in that either have worked with Amazon and spent way too much and have a bad taste in their mouth, or they only want to run bottom of the funnel, really, really low spend campaigns, and they're not giving DSP the right investment that it needs. That's a problem with more of the outside inputs. Now, the problems with the platform and with Amazon. So one of the biggest issues, and we already kind of touched on this in one of the last questions, was analytics. Amazon keeps everything so tight to their chest that we have the raw data to look at, but in my mind, since DSP and PPC are all sending to the same product pages, Amazon should be able to attribute sales to either PPC or DSP or an organic sale correctly. And they should be able to show us within the seller account where all of that came from, and they just don't. Now, hopefully that's something that AMC will help with. So just lack of transparency on where metrics are coming from, where there's overlap between DSP and PPC and organic, where things are being attributed. That's one of the biggest issues that we run into, and one of the reasons so many sellers seem hesitant, because there's just it's a lot of gray area, it seems like, with DSP.
Yeah. I want Abby to jump in on this one, because for anybody on the call, Abby is on the front lines for our agency every single day, managing the client relationships for our agency partners and the clients that we serve at our own agency. And so, Abby, you're the one usually that hears about frustrations, challenges, things like that from brands. Anything additional that you would say, that just some of the common things that come in that you hear?
Yeah. So I think like one thing that we've already called out that I think is good to note is DSP is view attributed. And so occasionally we will get some inflated numbers just because that's the nature sometimes of view-based advertising. And so we're very good at explaining that kind of phenomenon to our clients whenever we see those numbers. But sometimes that can cause distrust in all of the attribution, just kind of as Austin was speaking about. And so we do have to take them with a grain of salt. We do have to look at tacos, look at PPC, PPC, how it's performing as well. We can't kind of like look at DSP in a silo. And so that's something that we kind of see if we're just looking at DSP ROAS, and if we try to test something upper funnel and we're just looking at ROAS, we can sometimes see frustrations of like, oh, that in-market campaign that we're running that's reaching millions of people, we're only seeing a 0.5x ROAS, and that's not how we measure success or see success. So sometimes that's kind of difficult to explain as well. Also, there are some products that don't perform well on DSP. And it's sometimes difficult to anticipate when a product isn't going to perform well. Like we have experience and we can say, oh, for instance, filters are not a good product to advertise on DSP because, you know, if somebody has an air filtration system and they need a new filter, if they look at a product page and it's not the right size filter, then they're not, you know, we can retarget them all we want. They're not going to buy that product, you know? And so we have that experience and we can let somebody know, you know, at the start that that's not going to work. But occasionally there will be a product that just kind of doesn't take off. And so when that happens, when a product just kind of, sometimes it's a little bit trial and error. If a product doesn't take off, that can lead to, again, kind of distrust of DSP, as Chris was mentioning. And so those are some of the frustrations that we feel from clients kind of on a normal basis, just some distrust because of that view-based attribution, distrust because we tried one thing and it didn't work, and we aren't necessarily willing to try other things because we aren't seeing that return, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you for your explanation. And we almost finished. I have one more question, and before I would like to suggest our guests to ask any question they want to know or clarify maybe something. So if you want something, please put your question in chat box in Zoom, and then we will discuss this question. And I would like to ask my last question, and I would like to ask you to share with us any interesting cases, maybe good cases, maybe worst cases, but something you want to tell us.
Yeah. And Chris already mentioned, we actually have a case study that has been published and put on our website that, because we'll need to get that and we can send a link to it. But I had a client come to me about 14 months ago and tell me that we had been running DSP for them for a couple of years at this point, and we spent about 10 to 12,000 a month pretty consistently. He spent 170,000 on PPC, give or take. But he came to me and he said, I want to lean more into DSP. And basically that was my direction. He didn't give me a budget. He just kind of gave me the freedom to experiment and push where I thought would work best. So over the course of the last 13 to 14 months, we increased their DSP ad spend from 12 to 13,000 a month to we're at about 48 to 50,000 a month right now. Their PPC ad spend hasn't changed a bit. They averaged, I believe, 178,000 a month in 2021. Last year, they averaged about 177,000. So nearly flat spend on PPC. Their sales are up 20% year over year. So Amazon spend, if you look at PPC and DSP combined, Amazon spend increased by about 12% year over year. Almost all of that increase was DSP, and we saw a 20% lift in sales. They had their best month ever in August of last year. They're consistently hitting higher numbers than they've ever hit over the past 3 or 4 months. Have been some of the best months they've ever had. So that is one, really my favorite, because they came to me, they said they wanted to invest in DSP, and they didn't call it quits after 2 or 3 months. They gave it 8-9 months before we really judged the outcome. One thing that has led to our shift in budgets and strategies was this case study exactly, because I started pushing in the first 3 or 4 months. we had doubled ad spend, but we hadn't seen a huge impact on total sales. But once we hit that 6th, 7th, 8th month mark, that's when we started to see a trend. We were seeing average monthly sales increase, average sessions increase. We saw a decrease in, I guess it would CPA, so ad dollars per unit sold. And looking at year-over-year metrics and quarter-over-quarter, now that we've had a full year of scaling, we're actually able to see noticeable impacts on basically every performance metric that we've looked at.
Nice. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. And we don't have any more questions. So I would like to thank you all, Chris, Abby, Austin, Rob, thank you for joining us. I appreciate your time. Thank you for all people who join us today. And we don't have a question. Maybe it is because you gave answer for all sharp question. So maybe our mission complete then. So thank you. Have a good day. Thank you for you all, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was really
Thank
nice
you.
talking to you
Thank you.
guys. Bye bye.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.